Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a closer look at the Google Pixel 7. This is a premium Android smartphone that debuted at the end of 2022, so now it's approaching 1 year old, and later this year it's expected that Google will unveil the Pixel 8. But at this moment in time, it's still the current gen flagship. So first of all, in terms of pricing, Pixels have always been very competitive. Even at the original MRSP of $600, that's often undercutting the competition like the Galaxy S23, the latest iPhone 14s. However, you can often find steep discounts on the Pixel 7, whether it's during holiday promotions like Black Friday, or now that it's almost at the end of its release cycle, there are aggressive targeted ads, including saving up to $400 off of that MRSP. Though these offers will typically require a trade-in if you have an older gen Pixel, but could still be worthwhile and dramatically bring down the cost. If you're in the US, for instance, it does make Pixel phones a exceptional value. An even crazier example was during Black Friday, Pixel 6 owners could trade in to the Pixel 7 for just $20. So the hardware of the phones arguably aren't generating too much revenue for Google, but by getting you into their ecosystem, purchasing their other services, is probably what Google is betting on to break even. Similar strategy, in fact, to a lot of Amazon and Xiaomi products. So that makes it a bit tough to evaluate the Pixel 7 fairly because price and context is everything. Certain markets in Europe and Asia where the discounts aren't as readily available, then it's going to be more stiff in terms of competing against other Chinese OEMs and Samsung. So regardless, taking a closer look at the hardware first, the Pixel 7 is incredibly well built. It's inclusive of a 6.3-inch Full HD 90Hz fast refresh rate OLED screen, which is also HDR10 compatible. It offers very minimal bezels, although the chin is just a touch wider than the top left and right sides. Screen brightness has also been improved compared to the last gen Pixel 6. In the manual mode, you can reach 1000 nits, and in the auto mode, it can boost up to 1400 nits, which makes it quite competitive with other current gen flagships and a little bit easier to see in challenging outdoor conditions. The phone is also framed by an aluminum rail, which is matte, making it a little easier to grip. Both the front and the back are also protected by Corning Gorilla Glass Victus, which should be more shock as well as scratch resistant. Granted, it's still a glass sandwich at the end of the day and a little bit slippery, so I would still suggest either a case or some type of wrap for extra protection. The rear here houses a large 50 megapixel camera produced by Samsung. It's a 1/1.31-inch sensor, allowing more light to be collected in dimly lit conditions, as well as offering a natural bokeh. It also has OIS, and then there is a 12 megapixel ultra-wide angle lens, along with a dual-tone LED flash. One other feature that the Pro version has would be a 5x telephoto lens that is missing on the standard Pixel 7, though it does have a 2x kind of crop, which Google claims is lossless in terms of quality, but again, if you're zooming in any further from that, it will be done digitally. Now, this overall design of having this visor look has also been a part of the Pixel identity for many generations now. I think it looks quite clean. The phone as a whole, though, is still a tad on the larger side if you are used to older, regular version Pixels, like the second gen model, as you can tell here, which is more of a one-handed device. It's a trend for manufacturers to put larger screens on their devices, so if you do want a compact flagship, your only option at this point is the Zenfone series. Nonetheless, I think it's still manageable. In fact, for me, I wouldn't say the size is the issue, it's more the density and weight was a little bit more surprising when I first held this phone. It weighs almost 200 grams, so it's got a little bit more heft to it than I expected, and it definitely feels premium, but not the lightest thing in the world. Otherwise, on the right-hand spine, there's access to a volume rocker and also a power key, which are super tactile and clicky, very precise buttons. I also like how all the antenna lines are discreetly integrated into the design. Even the color matches the back, so craftsmanship is at least quite good. The bottom here features the USB Type-C port, which supplies up to 21 watts of fast charging. That's not the quickest in the industry, but it will fully juice up the phone in about an hour and 40 minutes. Although 50% can be charged up in 30 minutes, it then reduces the charging speed to preserve on the battery health. There's also going to be a microphone and stereo speakers, one at the bottom, and the earpiece dubs as the second speaker. Finally, the left-hand spine houses just the SIM card tray, but there is no expandable storage on this phone. The base model coming with 128GB of storage, and also 8GB of RAM is on board. On the front, there is a 10.8 megapixel selfie camera and serves as an alternative to the fingerprint scanner that is inside the display, which has also improved in terms of speed and accuracy compared to the Pixel 6. It still isn't necessarily as quick as on some traditional rear-mounted sensors, but it shouldn't get in the way of using the device either, and recognition, at least for me, has been pretty solid. With that being said, again, that face unlock, which is great to have as a backup, doesn't work in the dark, so it's a little less secure and can be fooled in some cases by a photograph, unlike the iPhone and also the Pixel 4, which had a IR sensor, but still nice to have that software feature, which was missing on the Pixel 6 and the 5. Otherwise, in terms of software, of course, that's one of the biggest reasons to consider a Pixel device is how clean and stock it is, running on Android 13 out of the box, but it's promised to receive 3 OS updates, so it will get at least Android 16. And like all Pixels, you get them on day one once the software has been pushed over the air. Now, running the show is a Google Tensor G2 processor. This is the second gen, quote-unquote, custom silicon made by Google after they stopped using Qualcomm's Snapdragon chipsets, going for an in-house solution which will supposedly improve core areas including AI, offering almost flawless voice-to-text transcription, as well as just making it easier to use the Google Assistant. Text messages can also be automatically translated, detecting spam calls and blocking them automatically, as well as advanced camera editing tricks like unblurring your shots, plus removing distractions from the photo using magic eraser functions. These are the type of tasks which will respond faster using the Tensor chip. With that being said, this 5nm architecture is technically a derivative of Samsung's Exynos processors, just one which has been slightly rebranded and tweaked by Google themselves. And phone geeks will know that Samsung on their flagship devices will typically release 2 variants, one which for certain markets they'll have their own Exynos chipset, and then in other North American markets they'll use the Qualcomm Snapdragon processor instead. And the general consensus is the Snapdragon variant tends to be a little bit more energy efficient, performance might be just marginally better than the Exynos variant. And that's mostly the case of what we find here, which is if you're looking at raw horsepower, that's not really the forte of these Tensor devices. In fact, performance here is roughly on par with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 Plus chipset, so that's not quite as competitive as something like the 8 Gen 2. Granted, it's still fast enough for the vast majority of consumers out there, and for things like taking images, even a bit of moderate gaming, as well as navigating around the UI, daily interactions, it still feels really smooth. With that being said, Tensor and Exynos chips in general tend to just run a little bit hotter in terms of thermals compared to the latest and greatest from Qualcomm, and that's certainly the case here. It's not necessarily a deal breaker, but the phone does get a bit warmer faster if you're pressing it a little bit harder, doing some more multitasking. But it is an area where hopefully Google can further refine and improve on in future gen models. It also means that in terms of power consumption tends to be a little higher as well, so this is not really a phone that has outstanding battery life. The 4,300 milliamp hour cell here mostly lasting you through a day's usage. Certainly not bad, but not going to be a 2-day phone either, for instance. One other thing that the Tensor G2 improves on compared to the original Tensor on the Pixel 6 though would be the modem. Connectivity for cellular has definitely improved. That was a point of critique on the original Pixel 6, but that has been thankfully mostly fixed on the Pixel 7's redesigned modem. Connectivity is once again very good. So let's jump into the camera next. It still remains as arguably one of the best cameras that you can find on any smartphone. The snap and go simplicity and easy to use UI are some of the key selling points where almost 9 out of 10 times you end up with a shot that just looks beautiful and you don't have to worry about recapturing. Although perhaps a Pro mode with more granular controls could be nice to see in a future variant. Granted, you can also go into a ultra-wide angle mode, as well as that aforementioned 2x zoom. You can get all the way up to 8 times using further digital zooming. Otherwise, video can be captured at 4K 60 FPS. Now you'll also find a cinematic video mode, which is basically applying a bokeh even if you're shooting video. Again, that primary sensor, which bends itself down to around 12 megapixels to preserve on space, is is excellent, especially the large lens allows you to get this natural bokeh even if you're not in the portrait mode. Everything just kind of falls off aside from the main object that you're capturing that looks just very professional and almost DSLR-like, and you still get the excellent contrast and details that a pixel photo provides. Colors look super punchy and vibrant. The wide-angle lens does distort a little bit at the extreme corners, but that's not too unexpected on an ultra-wide lens, I would argue. And compared to the primary sensor, I would say the color science is also mostly consistent. And of course, pixel phones have astrophotography, where if you hold the phone really still, or more likely put it onto a tripod, it can take even longer to capture an image of the night sky, and you get some very impressive looking shots. Takeaway being, if you do want a smartphone that offers one of the best photography experiences, simply snap and shoot. The Pixel 7 is still going to be a top choice. Now moving into a video playback and demo of what the speakers sound like. Turning things down, some takeaways being that it's not shabby. For a stereo speaker, you do get some added immersion. Granted, if you are an audiophile and you compare it with the Pixel 6, it's interesting that the Pixel 6 does seem to have a touch more depth and bass. However, volume output as well as trebles sound quite clean on the Pixel 7. Plus, there is one other hidden feature under menu, which is called adaptive sound, which supposedly uses the microphones to analyze your surroundings and improve the acoustics, including the EQ, automatically. So make sure you have that turned on, and it does tend to make a difference on the sound. So regardless of if you're watching YouTube, Netflix, or the like, it remains a pretty enjoyable and smooth experience. Same applies for web browsing. Simple tasks like reading back articles prove to be no issue for this processor to handle. The 8GB of RAM also ensures that you are able to open up, in my testing, almost 10 to 15 tabs, and things were still held into memory pretty well, and it's quick to load and jump back and forth between your open programs with ease. Some final extras on Pixel phones, including the voice recorder app, will offer you transcription to text and saving that for you. Plus, you can also add intelligent subtitles to any video that you're watching by using, again, AI and machine learning. Even if the original video that you're consuming doesn't have subtitles, the phone will provide that for you. Granted, it's only available in certain languages like English at the moment. Other standards like GPS, NFC, as well as Qi wireless charging, which also tops up at 20 watts, all work as expected. And in terms of gestures, you can flick your wrist in the camera app to switch over to the front-facing camera, as well as double tap to trigger some smart actions using the accelerometer. And it works decently. I would say sometimes takes a little practice to get used to, but it's kind of a neat extra. Also, the widget here on the home screen, which Google calls at a glance, is something that you can't actually remove from the Pixel launcher. That's an area where I think some folks want just a little bit more customization on, but this is also an intelligent widget that will change depending on the content that is relevant. For example, if there's an earthquake, as well as if your package has arrived, it will show you that relevant contextual information. As for gaming, this is not necessarily going to be the best performer if you are into more competitive titles, as we talked about, so you can definitely still install more demanding games like PUBG and Asphalt, and as expected of a modern flagship, play it back without too much issues. It's fast to download those titles, loading speeds are even reasonable, but again, it's just a little bit more toasty in terms of the thermals. You'll notice a bit more power draw compared to more efficient chips like the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, whereas Pixels are more about optimizing other areas of the user experience to give you a pretty complete package. So again, if you're into just mostly casual gaming and installing other third-party apps from the store, don't be afraid. This is still a device that will handle those tasks mostly without any problems. Other small details that the Pixel 7 gets right, including the haptics, those are areas that we have come to expect on most flagship devices. On here, it feels quite tight and precise. Plus access to other Google exclusives like a VPN that comes with the phone that will protect and encrypt your data. So that's more or less it for our review of the Google Pixel 7. Even though it's not the newest phone on the market anymore, it's still the current gen model from Google, and still one of the best camera experiences, period, all in a very fluid and clean software package. Especially in North America, With certain deals available on the Pixel 7, I would say it remains one of the best Android smartphones in general to consider, an excellent value. So you can check out more details if interested in the links down below. But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been our closer look at the Google Pixel 7.